The year is 1552. Dawn breaks over the Volga and the sky burns red. On the high wooden walls of Kazan, a Tatar warrior stands frozen in place. Smoke coils upward from distant villages. The wind carries a sound he knows too well, the dull, endless thunder of marching feet. At first it seems impossible. Then the horizon darkens, not a raid, not a scouting force, not even an army, a sea of men. Steel flashes like waves under the rising sun. Banners ripple, drums pound. Cannon wheels creak. As far as the eye can see, humanity moves as one unstoppable mass. 150,000 soldiers are advancing toward Kazan, swallowing the earth itself. The ground trembles beneath their boots. The warrior's blood turns to ice. Because at the head of that living avalanche rides a young man with a cold, unreadable stare, a man barely 22 years old, a man whose name will echo through history like a curse. Ivan, history will call him Ivan the Terrible. But this story does not begin here. It cannot begin here. To understand why this city is about to burn, why an entire world is about to end, we must go back 300 years, back to the birth of a nightmare. For 3 centuries, the Russian lands lived in fear, not fear of famine, not fear of plague, but fear of hooves. From the endless eastern steppe came thunder. Mongol cavalry, fast, merciless, unstoppable. Cities burned, churches collapsed. Entire populations vanished overnight. Men were slaughtered, women and children were dragged away in chains. Tribute was demanded not in silver, but in blood. This terror had a name. The Golden Horde. The Mongol Empire did not merely conquer, it crushed. It ruled through terror so complete that resistance became unthinkable. Russian princes bowed their heads. Taxes were collected under threat of annihilation. Generations were born knowing only submission, but even nightmares can die. In the 15th century, the Golden Horde began to rot from within. Civil war, betrayal, fragmentation. By the 1430s, the once-invincible empire shattered into rival khanates, remnants of a dead dragon. Yet dragons do not always die cleanly. From the broken corpse of the Golden Horde rose a new power, sharp and venomous, the Kazan Khanate. If the Golden Horde had been the dragon, then Kazan was its last fang, and it was still dripping poison. For over a century, Kazan haunted Moscow. Every year, Tatar cavalry swept west like wolves descending on a flock. Villages were erased, crops burned, entire families vanished into slavery, sold in markets as far away as Persia and the Ottoman Empire. Cities bled, Nizhny Novgorod, Vladimir, Murom. Their walls were blackened by fire, their people broken. Mothers learned not to scream when riders came. Screams only attracted the blade. Moscow fought back, again and again. 10 times in 115 years, Russian armies marched on Kazan. 10 times they failed. The city stood defiant, protected by strong walls, clever diplomacy, and the belief that the Mongol legacy could never truly be destroyed. Kazan had repelled princes, generals, and kings. Then a boy ascended the throne. He was 16 years old, orphaned, hardened by cruelty, raised in a court where betrayal was survival. When he placed the crown on his head, he did not call himself Grand Prince. He chose a different title, Tsar, Emperor. His name was Ivan IV, and Ivan had a dream. He would end the Mongol nightmare forever. Ivan was not reckless. He was not blinded by pride. He understood something his predecessors did not. Kazan could not be taken by courage alone. In 1547, Ivan had tried. He marched against Kazan with confidence and failed. His army collapsed under logistical chaos. Supply lines broke. Weather turned against him. The campaign ended in humiliation, but Ivan learned, and when Ivan learned, he remembered. If Kazan could not be crushed quickly, it would be strangled slowly. What followed was not war, it was preparation. In 1551, Ivan did something unprecedented. He ordered the construction of a fortress right on Kazan's doorstep, but the true genius lay in how it was done. Hundreds of miles away, deep inside Russian territory, carpenters worked day and night. Towers, walls, gates. Entire buildings were constructed piece by piece. Every beam was numbered, every joint measured. When the fortress was complete, it was dismantled like a puzzle. Then, carried by river and manpower, it floated down the Volga. The Tatars awoke one morning to an impossible sight. A Russian fortress rising from the earth almost overnight. It was as if the land itself had betrayed them. The message was unmistakable. This time Moscow would not retreat. This time Kazan would fall. June 16, 1552. Moscow. The city watches as an army unlike any in Russian history begins to move. Bells toll, priests bless banners, soldiers kneel, cross themselves, and rise knowing many will never return. 150,000 men march east. This is not a feudal levy. This is not a temporary host. This is something new. Ivan has created Russia's first standing infantry, the streltsy, professional soldiers, uniformed, trained, disciplined. Armed with matchlock firearms and massive poleaxes designed to split armor and bone alike. They wear bright coats, blue, red, green, and boots dyed the color of fire. But men are not Ivan's greatest weapon. Technology is. He brings artillery on a scale unseen in Eastern Europe, heavy cannons, medium guns, siege pieces capable of tearing walls apart. 150 mouths of iron, all hungry, and among his ranks marches something else. A secret. A man whose real name history will forget, but whose actions will change the world. August 22nd, 1552. The Siege of Kazan begins. The city is surrounded. Inside the walls, 10,000 defenders prepare to die. Kazan stands on a hill, protected by thick wooden walls packed with earth, walls that absorb cannon fire rather than shatter. Moats ring the city. Towers bristle with archers and guns. The defenders know the odds, 15-1. They also know surrender means annihilation. First cannon volleys roar. Day and night, thunder rolls across the plain. Smoke chokes the air. Cannonballs slam into the walls again and again and do almost nothing. Infantry assaults are thrown back in blood. Russian bodies pile in the mud. Then the sky turns against them. Storms descend like judgment. Rain pours without mercy. Wind shreds tents. The ground becomes a swamp. Soldiers sink knee-deep in filth, exhausted, soaked, freezing. From the walls, the Tatars laugh. They say the gods have chosen a side. Ivan does not retreat. Instead, he turns faith into a weapon. A holy relic is brought into camp, a fragment said to be from the true cross itself. Prayers are spoken, candles burn through the night, and then the storm breaks. The skies clear. To the Russian soldiers, it is a miracle. To Ivan, it is momentum. The siege continues. Weeks pass. Kazan still stands. Ivan tries terror. Prisoners are captured, staked near the walls, forced to beg their people to surrender. But the defenders do not break. The prisoners shout defiance. Tatar archers fire not at the Russians, but at their own kin, ending their suffering. It is a message written in blood. Kazan will never surrender. Ivan understands, and at last he unleashes his final weapon. Beneath the earth, unseen, unheard, men dig. Tunnels snake toward the city walls. In darkness, engineers work in silence, knowing one collapse will bury them alive. Their leader is a foreign master of siegecraft, a man known only as Razmisl. Then he finds it. Underground spring, the lifeline of Kazan. With a single explosion, the water vanishes. Inside the city, wells run dry. The sun beats down, thirst begins to kill where swords cannot, and still Kazan does not surrender. Outside the walls, Ivan builds a monster. A siege tower 40 feet high. Massive, mobile, a fortress on wheels. It carries 10 heavy cannons and 50 lighter guns on a single platform. A concentration of firepower unheard of in its age, but it cannot move forward yet. Kazan's artillery still lives, so Ivan orders silence. One by one, Tatar cannons are destroyed. At last, the tower advances, and beneath the walls, the final charges are set. The fuses are ready. The city holds its breath. History stands on the edge of a blade. Early October 1552. 6 weeks of siege have ground Kazan down to the bone. Inside the city, time has stopped meaning anything. Water is gone. Food is almost gone. The streets are choked with the dead, warriors, civilians, children. The smell of decay clings to the air, thick and suffocating, impossible to escape. Dogs fight over corpses. Fires burn unattended. The wounded lie where they fell, too weak to scream. Yet still the banners of Kazan fly. Khan Yadigar Mohammed refuses to bend. His nobles refuse to bend. The warriors, starving, dehydrated, exhausted, refuse to bend. They know what awaits them if the walls fall. Mercy will not come. If Kazan is to die, it will die standing. Outside the walls, Ivan watches in silence. He does not rage, he does not shout, he does not celebrate, he waits, because everything is ready. Beneath the ground, Razmisl's work is complete. Tunnels spider under the great walls of Kazan like veins beneath skin. At key points, chambers have been carved out and packed with explosives. Not one breach, not two, many. Each charge is connected in sequence, designed to collapse entire sections of wall one after another, overwhelming defenders before they can react. This is not brute force. This is precision. Above ground, the great siege tower stands loaded. 60 cannons are elevated, aimed, and primed. Gunners wait with slow-burning fuses in hand. The Streltsy stand in formation, thousands of men shoulder to shoulder, arquebuses resting against chests, bardaches planted into the dirt, bright coats splashed with mud. Faces hollow, eyes burning, they know this moment. They have been waiting for it. Ivan withdraws to a nearby hill. He does not command the assault directly. Instead, he kneels in prayer. Whether he prays for victory or absolution, no one knows. Command passes to Prince Alexander Gorbaty-Shuisky. The signal is given. Light the fuses. The world explodes. The first blast tears through the wall near the Nagai gate. Earth, timber, and stone erupt skyward in a storm of fire and debris. The ground convulses like a wounded beast, then another explosion. And another boom, boom, boom. The walls of Kazan collapse in sequence exactly as planned. Towers crumble, defensive platforms vanish. Entire sections of the city's proud fortifications fold inward like rotten wood. Before the dust can settle, the siege tower roars to life. 60 cannons fire at once. The sound is beyond thunder. It is a physical force, punching the air from lungs, rattling bones, shattering nerves. Cannonballs slam into the breaches, widening them into open wounds. Debris rains down on defenders desperately trying to regroup. And then from 150,000 throats comes a single word. Yura, the Russian army surges forward. The assault is chaos. Smoke blankets the battlefield. Arquebuses crack, filling the air with white clouds and the stench of sulfur. Cannon fire continues overhead as the first waves hit the shattered walls. The Streltsy pour through the breaches. Follows is not a battle. It is slaughter, street by street, house by house, room by room. Tatar warriors fight like men already dead. They ambush from alleys, rooftops, doorways. They strike and vanish. They drag Russians into buildings and cut them down in darkness. Blood slicks the cobblestones. Bodies pile so high they form makeshift barricades. The Russians respond with overwhelming force. Arquebus volleys tear through defenders at close range. Bardaches rise and fall, splitting shields, helmets, skulls. Cannons are dragged into the city itself, firing down streets at point-blank range. There is no mercy, there is no order, only violence. Inside the citadel, the final defenders gather. Khan Yadigar Mohammed knows the end has come. His allies are dead or scattered. The Nagai leader Zhan is captured. The city is lost. Still, resistance continues until the last possible moment. When the gates finally fall, it is over. By noon on October 2nd, 1552, Kazan is silent. The city that defied Moscow for over a century lies broken. The Kazan Khanate, the last great heir of the Golden Horde, is finished. Victory does not bring peace, it brings fury. Centuries of hatred erupt unchecked. Russian soldiers massacre civilians. Mosques burn. Entire neighborhoods are erased. The streets run red. Those who cannot flee are cut down. Those who surrender are often killed anyway. From dungeons beneath the city, Russian captives emerge, men and women enslaved for decades. They step into sunlight for the first time in years, blinking, weeping, barely believing they are alive. The price of victory is written in corpses. Ivan enters the ruined city. He does not smile. Moscow erupts in celebration. Ivan returns as a conqueror, hailed as the Tsar who ended the Mongol nightmare. Bells ring, crowds kneel, priests proclaim divine victory. Ivan is only 22 years old, and he has done what no Russian ruler had achieved in 300 years. A son is born to him soon after, but Kazan is not finished fighting. The countryside ignites, survivors flee into forests and marshes. Tatar leaders establish resistance governments. Guerrilla warfare erupts, ambushes, raids, assassinations. Russian patrols vanish in the snow. Villages change hands again and again. For 4 years, the region bleeds. Thousands die. Thousands more are captured. Entire populations are displaced. The resistance fights with desperation, but it cannot stop the tide. By 1556, the last fortresses fall. The Volga is secure, and Ivan does not stop. That same year, Russian armies move south and crush the Astrakhan Khanate. The Volga River, north to south, source to sea, now belongs entirely to Moscow. Trade routes open, armies march where none could before. The doors to Siberia swing open, the doors to the Caucasus creak wide. The doors to Asia stand unguarded. Something new is being born, not a kingdom, an empire. In Moscow, Ivan orders a monument. Not a statue, not a fortress, a cathedral. 9 towers rise on Red Square, crowned with swirling colors and impossible shapes, a vision of heaven carved in stone. It will be known as St. Basil's Cathedral, a celebration of victory, faith, and power. A legend will later claim Ivan blinded its architects so they could never create anything more beautiful. True or not, the story fits, because by now Ivan's name carries a different meaning, not just conqueror, not just czar, but terror. The fall of Kazan ends an era. 300 years of fear vanish in a single day. The shadow of the Golden Horde finally dissolves. Russia stands unbowed, bloodied, and transformed. But something else is born alongside that victory. A state forged in fire, an empire built on conquest, a legacy of cruelty entwined with genius. Ivan has destroyed the Mongol nightmare, but in doing so, he has created a new one. And history will remember him not only for what he defeated, but for what he became. The world did not change overnight. Empires never announce their birth with trumpets alone. They reveal themselves slowly through blood, through borders, through silence where resistance once lived. After Kazan, the Volga ran quiet. The great river that had once carried slave caravans and tribute for Mongol Khans now carried Russian banners. Fortresses rose where Tatar watchtowers once stood. Roads were cut through forests that had hidden ambushes for centuries. The land was renamed, reorganized, rewritten. For the first time in living memory, the eastern frontier of Russia did not bleed, and that frightened the world. The fall of Kazan sent a message far beyond its shattered walls. To the steppe nomads, it was a warning. The age of Mongol dominance was over. To Europe, it was a revelation. A new power had emerged in the east. To Asia, it was an opening door. Russia was no longer a survivor. Russia was a conqueror. Ivan understood this better than anyone. He had not simply defeated a city, he had broken a system. For 300 years, power in Eastern Europe flowed from the steppe inward. Now, for the first time, it flowed outward. With Kazan destroyed and Astrakhan conquered, the Volga became an artery of empire. Trade poured north and south. Armies marched without obstruction. Explorers crossed the Urals. Cossacks rode into lands no Russian ruler had ever controlled. Siberia, vast, frozen, endless, lay exposed. The conquest would take decades, the bloodshed would be immense, but the path had been opened at Kazan. Yet victory has a price that history rarely pays up front. Ivan changed after 1552. Something hardened. The man who had prayed before the assault now trusted fear more than faith. The Tsar who once planned with patience began ruling with suspicion. Enemies, real or imagined, seemed to multiply around him. If Kazan had been taken through precision and preparation, what followed was ruled by terror. Ivan created a state within a state. He unleashed purges. He ordered executions. Cities that defied him were punished mercilessly. Nobles were broken, families erased. Loyalty was no longer enough, only obedience mattered. The same ruthlessness that destroyed the Mongol legacy now turned inward. The empire survived, but the cost was its soul, and still history cannot deny him. Ivan IV did what no ruler before him could. He ended the shadow of the Golden Horde. He shattered the last Mongol successor state. He transformed Russia from a battered frontier realm into an expanding imperial power. The Battle of Kazan was not just a siege, it was a hinge of history. Before Kazan, Russia was shaped by fear. After Kazan, Russia shaped the world. Today, Kazan still stands, rebuilt, modern, alive. Its walls no longer echo with cannon fire. Its streets no longer run with blood, yet beneath the stone and asphalt lies a memory of a city that refused to surrender and of an army that refused to stop. On Red Square, St. Basil's Cathedral still rises, its colors defying logic, its beauty masking the violence that gave it birth. Tourists photograph it. Children play nearby. Few remember the screams, few remember the thirst, few remember the cost, but history remembers. On October 2nd, 1552, a city fell. A nightmare ended, and an empire was born, not in glory, not in mercy, but in fire, blood, and the cold will of a 22-year-old Tsar who was willing to do what no one else dared. Ivan the Terrible did not earn his name by accident. He earned it at Kazan, and from that day forward the world would never be the same. But history never truly ends at victory. Long after the smoke cleared from Kazan, long after the bodies were buried or forgotten, the consequences of that siege continued to echo quietly, relentlessly through centuries. Because when the Mongol nightmare ended, something else took its place. power. The conquest of Kazan rewired the Russian mind. For generations, survival had been the goal, endurance, submission when necessary, patience, but now survival was no longer enough. The lesson of 1552 was simple and terrifying: force worked. Walls could be broken, empires could fall, fear could be weaponized. From that moment on, expansion became destiny. The Volga was only the beginning. Russian explorers pushed east, following rivers into forests that never ended. Cossacks rode beyond the horizon, claiming land not with treaties, but with fire and steel. Forts appeared overnight. Indigenous peoples were conquered, displaced, or absorbed. Siberia fell not in a single war, but in 1,000 brutal encounters. Each conquest carried the echo of Kazan, the same logic, the same certainty, the same belief that resistance was temporary and annihilation was final. Yet Kazan also left scars that never healed. The Tatars did not disappear. They remembered the thirst, they remembered the tunnels, they remembered the explosion that tore their world open from beneath their feet. Their culture survived, but under watch, under pressure, under a state that had learned how to rule through dominance. Faith was restricted. Language was controlled. Identity became something to be defended quietly, carefully. Empires conquer land easily. Memory is harder, and Ivan did not live to see the full shape of what he created. His reign darkened, paranoia consumed him. He murdered his own son in a fit of rage. His later years were marked not by triumph, but by isolation, fear, and regret, if regret ever reached him at all. When Ivan the Terrible died in 1584, he left behind an empire without stability. Strong borders, weak foundations. The chaos that followed civil war, famine, invasion would nearly destroy Russia entirely during the time of troubles. History's cruel irony. The man who ended a nightmare also planted the seeds of another. And yet, without Kazan, there is no empire stretching to the Pacific. Without Kazan, there is no Siberia, no Arctic frontier, no Eurasian giant. Without Kazan, Russia remains a wounded survivor instead of a global force. This is the paradox of empire. It creates greatness through suffering. It builds futures on graves. It demands blood to purchase time. Today, the Battle of Kazan is remembered differently depending on who tells the story. To some, it is liberation, to others, conquest, to many, tragedy. But all agree on one truth. October 2nd, 1552 was a turning point. A line drawn in blood between the world that was and the world that followed. On that day, a young czar stood at the edge of history and chose destruction over compromise, victory over mercy, empire over peace. And the world has been living with that choice ever since. Because when Kazan fell, it was not just a city that burned. An age ended, and the fire that replaced it has never fully gone out.